Welcome to the Assistant Lab podcast, hosted by Victoria Racken and Anel Martin.
This podcast is dedicated to the executive assistant profession, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
We've created this podcast for the outliers, the linchpins, the assistants who are serious about their careers. This is a podcast for those who are preparing for the future today.
This is a space for no-nonsense content, benchmarking and tracking industry and world trends, as well as interesting interviews with exceptionally inspirational people. The goal here is to stimulate new ways of thinking and being in this profession.
So, on with the show.
Welcome to this next episode of the Assistant Lab. Today we're delighted to welcome Hannah Gough, an executive assistant at Hollis, based in their Manchester office. Hannah has got a really inspiring and extraordinary tale through her career journey, which we're really excited to share with you today. Starting life as an apprentice, working her way up to executive assistant, all the trials and tribulations along the way. But I think you'll really get a lot from this interview. Hannah has got some really tangible tips for you to take away here, and also I think she's one of these people that just has oodles of resilience as well. So enjoy. Well, good morning, Hannah, and welcome to the Assistant Lab podcast. Thank you so much for giving up your time for us today. I'm really, really looking forward to this interview.
Me too. Yes, good morning.
It's really good to meet you, Hannah. And today I'm hoping to find out a lot more about you. The interviews we've done so far have been interesting in such different ways and on different levels. So I'm really excited about today's conversation. So let's go right back to the beginning, Hannah. Tell us what happened after your schooling levels were done. What happened next and how did you end up where you are now?
Okay, so I left school at 16 and I started an apprenticeship at the local council. So it was an apprenticeship where you spent 6 months in each department, kind of, find your way around, learn different things. It's very much a new role that they did there, and it was day release and doing a BTEC national in business and finance. So yeah, I very much went that route instead of university, despite a lot of pressure from some of my teachers saying, Hannah, you need to go to university. And I was like, do you know what? I feel like I'm kind of done with the sort of school environment right now. I want to get out and get into the world. So so I did that apprenticeship there and got a job working for the council, but at the local sports centre. So I moved around a little bit, and that was still moving around because it involved covering at the local theatre as well. So I was doing box office there as well as administration in the sports centre. So yeah, I've worked in a lot of places around Chesterfield, which is where I sort of started my career there. And from there, I kind of moved around a lot in my 20s because Chesterfield's a small town. And so you hit the ceiling very quickly. It's very much dead man's shoes kind of thing when you're working there. So, and I found I kind of got a bit bored after maybe sort of 2 years in a role. I needed a new challenge, needed to do something else. So it was a case of just moving around and doing something else. Now, it may surprise you, but I've done a lot of different things. So I've worked in IT support.
Okay.
I've worked in purchasing at 2 different companies. I've worked in hospitality, in hotels, bars, and said theatre. I'm also a trained barista because I managed a coffee shop at one point. And
I'm a coffee snob, Hannah. So I'm on this page, right? Even my Instagram profile says #coffee snob. So I'm here for this.
Yeah, I can make you a perfect cappuccino. So yeah, there you go.
Love it.
I've also worked in pensions admin, and in amongst all that, I took a gap year as well. So yeah, I really hopped around a lot in my 20s.
But I think many of us can relate to that. You hit the nail on the head, Hannah, because this is what happened to me early on in my career. And, you know, you get recruiters kind of saying, oh, well, you've been jumping. Yeah, because I hit a lid and I'm bored. And when you're in your 20s, you're not going to stick it out. You're going to move on if they don't change things.
And also, I think certain personalities, I don't think it's necessarily age related. I think certain personalities are striving personalities. So you feel I can do more. I'm absolutely at the max of what I can perform here, but there's more for me personally. So I think a lot of people can relate to that. And, you know, like you were saying, everything from, you know, I worked as a waitress and then I worked in the construction industry. I think what they all have in common is people. And if you really care about people and if you are attracted to working with people, then, you know, those skills are infinitely transferable between different industries, you know. So I think a lot of people will relate to that, Hannah.
Yeah, and you know, in a way, I think it helped me as I've gone along my career because I've worked in different industries and different environments. So I don't have a very narrow blinkered approach. You know, I can think outside the box and pull experience from all of those different areas into my role. And I think that's what makes me the sort of the rounded, you know, package that I am now.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, you haven't seen Hannah's CV. I have. It's a very, very strong CV. One of the best I've seen in a little while, if I'm being honest. So, but looking back at that, obviously where you are now, and it was KPMG before, wasn't it? And your roles, even between these two firms, have been different. You had people management and lots of other added elements at KPMG.
Yeah, so I moved into people management when I moved to Manchester. So I've worked in various different companies here as well, bouncing between financial services and property. And management was something that I started taking on in my roles. I started off with about a team of 12, and then a slightly smaller team. And then I worked at KPMG where I had a team of 40, which was a pure performance management role. So, yeah, I didn't have to do any of the day-to-day support during that. So that was a great opportunity to get involved with that, with the development. And then one of the highlights for me was working with the apprentices there, because they were just an absolute joy to, you know, see develop during their career and, you know, see where they are.
Satisfying.
Now, yeah, it was really, really great. But it was quite stressful after a while, and there were some other issues which I'll not go into now, but I felt like I needed to just step away from management for a while and get back to, you know, the roots of doing what I do as a service role. And so that's when I took the move to come to Hollis to undertake a pure PA role, which I'm really loving.
Hannah, you raised a very interesting point, and you've got the experience as a people manager. Often assistants, this is thrust on them without, I know in my own experience, I never wanted to manage people. I am a specialist. I'm not a manager. Okay. And I'm one of those people who can proudly say it. I'm happy to manage a team if I get to hand select them, but I was given a team and I had this incredible moment of where do I start? This massive anxiety of, you know, especially if you're a specialist by nature and suddenly you've got to manage people. Do you have any tips for people in that situation right now? Because you've been there. What helped you get through those initial phases and that initial anxiety?
So I'm trying to think now. So when I was at Mercer, I still got promoted into like a supervisory role. And I was very lucky there that I had a kind of informal coach with the HR business partner and also the operations manager. So when I had difficult conversations to do, they would talk me through them. So we always had like a practice run through before I had to have those conversations. So that gave me the confidence then to go in and do it. yeah, that really helped me. And they did quite a lot of training sessions as well for us, lunch and learns on, you know, various management and performance management topics. So yeah, I'd say do whatever training is offered to you. Take whatever advice you can get, just soak it up like a sponge, because it'll really help you. But also don't shy away from those difficult conversations, because they're difficult for a reason, but you only learn by putting yourself in that zone of discomfort.
Absolutely.
Once you've done it once, you can do it again.
And you know, Hannah, you make such a good point. I always say I've got one specific module that I train on, specifically on conflict and difficult discussions. And I believe we are all one difficult discussion from a better outcome, a better life. So as much as it might be difficult for me to have the discussion with somebody, I could move them forward by having that discussion. So, you know, I think it's an important part of the job, and something where, like you say, there is an amount of discomfort, but it's important.
Yes, I think, and you definitely again hit on great points there, Hannah. I didn't want to be a people manager, but I acquired an assistant to my role as EA to the CEO, and I was very young. I'd had no training on it, and frankly I sunk faster than the Titanic initially. Got into very difficult spots, where it made me question whether I even wanted to carry on with my EA career. It just went so badly wrong, and then I retrospectively got training on it, but like Hannah, after I left that job, I was going to interviews going, there's no people management, is there? I just want a break from it, and I did acquire it again later on, but I, like Hannah said, I also needed a break from it. And the Chartered Management Institute brought out this lovely piece of research a couple of years ago. Well, lovely, interesting. They said the UK's got 2.4 million accidental managers. And so they're people that are good at their functional expertise, so great at being an EA, great at being a recruiter or HR, but as part of their promotion up the career ladder, they're then acquiring staff, but they're untrained. And it becomes accidental, and basically the report talks about how much it's costing the UK economy and productivity and potential tribunals, all that kind of thing. So yeah, I back up what you're saying, Hannah. Anyone that's listening, if you're looking at people management, definitely go and get some training.
And also, you know, I think on the other side of the coin, if you are working for one of those accidental managers as an EA, he's a first-time manager, you can add so much value because you've seen, and I think I always say to people, we've got leadership training that we're getting for free. You know, we have front row seats to the action. So when you get that new executive who hasn't managed people, we can actually support them in such a profound way, you know, hands-on practically. So I think that's an important point as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I've had members of my team who've been helping their execs with recruitment for their team. You know, they would help out with first, you know, sweeps of CVs and first chats, because they know the director, they know the team, and they'll know whether they fit. So, you know, they're actually intrinsically involved in that recruitment process as well.
And, you know, if you've been working for an executive for long enough, I mean, I had one specific lady that I was working for, and she would explain what she wanted in a presentation, and eventually she would send me to the person's desk. She's like, am I not speaking English? Please visit so-and-so, because that communication style becomes very entwined. Intuitively, you know what they're going to like and not going to like. And I think that also adds value, you know, that functions as a second brain. I don't need to be there because you can cull that first list and take that off my plate. So that's really important as well.
So Hannah, you're at Hollis. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Hollis and who Hollis are as a company for anyone that hasn't heard of them before.
So Hollis are a real estate consultancy. We work across quite a few different service lines, mostly dilapidations. We do a lot of technical due diligence, doing a lot in ESG and environmental at the moment. So yeah, big company, and it's really interesting to get involved and see what we're doing out there that's actually affecting, you know, the bricks and mortar in places where we live and work. So yeah, I support 2 executives at the moment, and yeah, they're great guys. I couldn't ask for two better guys to work for, to be honest. They're both at the top of their game, and yeah.
Always awesome to work with inspirational people.
Yeah.
But while we're talking about that, I hear that you've recently been nominated for the excellence category for the Manchester PA Awards. What does the award mean to you? How does it feel being nominated? You know, just give us a little bit of the feeling about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's always great to be nominated. I mean, I know that my execs value the work that I do because they tell me. So, you know, in a way, I don't need an award, but at the same time, you know, it's nice to get that external recognition as well, because you know that you're doing a good job. It's almost a little bit of like self-validation in a way, to go,
Absolutely.
yeah, I know I'm good, I think, but does anyone else think that I'm doing a good job? How do I compare, you know, with other people out there? Are they doing other things that I could be doing? So I think when you go to the awards and you see the bios and the profiles of the people that's been shortlisted, it's great to kind of have a read to them, but then also have a chat to them on the night and say,
absolutely,
what are you doing? And that's one of the best things about the sort of the Manchester PA network that we've got, that you can have those conversations with people.
And you know, Hannah, just coming back to that, you know, I was in an award in 2011 and I made lifelong friends. 23 years later, or you know, 20 years later, we all still genuinely good friends. So it's expanding not only your peer group, not only giving you an opportunity to benchmark, but you have people around you that are similar in, you know, how they look at the role, how the struggles, the happinesses, the challenges.
Yeah, definitely. And it's so good to celebrate the profession as well, because it can be overlooked at times, and
absolutely,
people maybe don't get the same level of recognition in their job, and so it's a platform to give that to them.
And also to profile the profession locally. You know, everyone knows the awards are happening. We are profiling people from our profession. You know, I think that also matters, you know, as much as, yes, the individual recognition, but also just shining a spotlight on the profession for that night, you know, that I think is also really important.
Yeah, and we're going to be keeping everything crossed for you, Hannah, as you go through that process, the shortlisting finalist process. So I'm looking forward to that, and I will be there at the Manchester PA Awards on the night. Well, it's you know, Manchester's so. It's everyone used to say London's really glamorous, but for those of us coming up from London, we're like, oh my god, it's the Manchester PA Awards. We've really got to glam up here. We've got to make an effort.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm already booking a hair and makeup artist. So I'm like,
I see.
Oh, that's fabulous. But I must also say from my side, in South Africa, it's something that doesn't translate in the rest of the world. I'll be holding thumbs for you. Okay, that's a South. I always thought it translated globally until I was at an event with people from all over and they said, what is this holding thumbs? So just know I'll be holding thumbs for you in South Africa.
Brilliant. Hannah, there's a lot going on with people's careers at the moment. And, you know, we've been through this pandemic. Some PAs are feeling a bit stagnated, bored, just lost a bit of mojo. What are the key drivers for you for continuing in the profession at the moment? I mean, what gets you up out of bed in the morning?
I mean, for me, it's really the people that you work for. I think, you know, I've seen that across all roles that I've had. Having a good team, so not just the execs that you work for, they're a massive part of it. You know, if I didn't enjoy the work and, you know, the challenges that my execs throw at me, then, you know, that would be the problem. But actually it's more than that. It's having a good team, like in the office, but the wider team across the business. And I can quite honestly say I've not met a single person at Hollis who I didn't like yet. And, you know, that is quite rare, I think, in some companies.
But I think that also speaks to how they recruit and what they're looking for from a culture point of view. So, you know, I think that is more intentional than we give it credit for sometimes, that people are really aware of what their culture is and what kind of people they want.
Absolutely. And it is a very strong culture that we've got here. So yeah, that is something that I look for when I'm applying for roles, is that culture piece, almost more than the job. It's like, will I like the people that I'm going to work for?
100%.
Yeah.
You know, the old saying is true. People don't leave jobs, they leave bad bosses, you know, or they leave toxic environments. It is absolutely true for so many people. And I think, you know, you said that cultural fit, if you are working for somebody who's good to you, that you've got good chemistry with, good synergy, then you can get through the toughest of jobs or projects because you pull together. So that makes a lot of sense. That really resonates.
I think also, I mean, you look at, I'm just going to be honest here, we always have a bit of controversy on this show now, don't we? But a lot of the job adverts in this country are so staid. Like, barely any of us are going to be bought into the advert. There might be a little something that pips our interest, and then it's like Hannah was saying, actually, if I get to the interview, then I can find out more about what they're actually like as a company. Yeah. And then I
don't know about you ladies, but as soon as I see a job advert that says can work under stress, that translates to you can't plan and I'll be cleaning up all day. There are certain things in those job adverts that I look at and they're red flags for me, but I often feel there's such a big disconnect between HR, the hiring manager, and the actual job. It's like they've never met an EA before. So I think that's a global problem. It's not just a UK problem.
Definitely. Absolutely. I mean, recruitment was one of the things I really enjoyed as a manager. That was one of my favourites. Just meeting people, finding out about them, thinking in my head, are they going to be a good fit for that particular stakeholder? Will they fit with the team? And it's like a big jigsaw. Yeah, exactly. You know, and then going back to the directors and trying to like negotiate and sell, and a bit of diplomacy going on there. So yeah, I love the recruitment piece. Yeah.
I also spent a bit of time in the recruitment sphere and many years in an HR department, and I totally relate to that, you know, when you meet somebody and you think, okay, and often people underestimate when it's the assistant meeting the person. That impression matters to my boss. My boss has often said to me, how did that person treat the reception staff? How did that person treat the other people around them? They don't care what face that person is showing to them. They care about how did they interact with everybody else. So I think people sometimes underestimate that.
Definitely. And as you know, I spent a big chunk of my career at the world's biggest recruiter. So I do like recruitment as well. Well, now I think it's over to you, actually. We were
the perception of the profession is not great. Okay, I think there are individual pockets of real excellence, but the perception out there, not only from, you know, the performance of the group, but also media perceptions. You know, how have you experienced that? What do you think we can do better?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. There is still such a problem with stereotyping of PAs, secretaries. They think that we're all in like this Mad Men era where all we do is wear pencil skirts, make tea and file our nails. And that is so not true. But if you say to anybody in the street, what does a secretary do? Oh, I do a bit of typing and filing, and like, they have no idea what we do at all. So that's frustrating, but it is led, like you say, by media, by television, by films. They're all portrayed in that very stereotypical way. And not only that, they're all women. And this is why campaigns like the EPAA, Not Just a Girl's Job, is so important, you know. And when that came out, it really resonated with me because I had males in my team, and it was something that I was actively trying to sort of balance when we were doing recruitment, to try and get that diversity in the team, because you get so much more out of having a diverse team when you've got a mix of everybody.
But also, you know, now that we're talking about that, when I look at how, you know, the assistant materials are branded on social media, often it's pink, often it's fluffy, often it's a woman. Some people are actually doing, you know, people in our industry are doing this to ourselves. Yes. So I don't always think it's imposed from outside. I think sometimes we as trainers, as magazines, as event organizers, as award organizers are perpetuating this, because if I look at the branding for these things, it's a woman. and it's a specific type of woman. Okay. So to me, I think we also not doing ourselves any favors there.
Absolutely. I remember going to a PA event some years ago, and the whole thing had been branded pink, literally everything pink, down to pink lady cocktails, pink goodie bags, everything was fluffy. And at that point, like, it was around the time the campaign came out as well, so it was all fresh in my head. And I actually went to the people organising and I said, look, this is not right. We're not going to get men into the industry if we're putting on events that are just, like, I couldn't cope with that amount of pink. Never mind, you know, a guy coming into the environment.
Never mind a red-blooded male, you know. And I think things like this become obvious when you are sitting next to the lone male in the room. And then you realize how cringy it actually is sometimes. So I've had moments like that as well. And it's I think we need to change that discussion completely. And if we want to be taken seriously, I'm a business person. I don't want to be at this pinky pink event. I find some of it a little bit almost like juvenile and patronizing to a point. So I totally relate to that. I've had that experience.
And another way we can look at it as well is on job descriptions and making sure that they are gender neutral, so that it will encourage applications through from men. So looking at the terminology, so maybe don't call it secretary, call it coordinator, call it something else that is more, that could have a broader appeal.
Yeah, I totally get that. I remember bringing out the Not Just a Girl's Job campaign, and you know, before I set up EPAA, I specifically had focus groups from all around the UK and did some focus groups with the male PAs I knew. And we couldn't find a single campaign, anything around any of the PA organisations around the world that had been done. Absolutely nothing. In fact, when I went to a few associations saying, have you broached this? No, we're not getting into that area. This is all about women and equality. And I got some heat for that campaign at the start. I had some direct messages into my inbox and my DM on Twitter. It was some of it not so nice, because apparently I wasn't supporting women, but I just decided to forge ahead with it because it was the right thing to do. And frankly, as an EA myself at the time, I was fed up with these job adverts going on about Mary Poppins and come and be the office superhero, you know, stuff that women might be more drawn to. I didn't want to see that in the job adverts. I mean, when I first became a young secretary, they were even still then, Hannah, you'll probably remember it, in the job advert saying you must have a bubbly, good sense of humour. I mean, that's only been taken off recently.
And the other job adverts that freaked me out is, and you must be attractive, good with people, and under 35. That's another big warning sign to me.
Or, you know, you've got to have a certain look to work on reception. You know, you can't have piercings or tattoos or strange coloured hair. You know, it's all wrong, because what does any kind of tattoo or piercing affect your ability to do a job?
To get the job done.
Yeah.
I think it has been lovely since the campaign, seeing what's happened with the male assistants. Now, we've still got a lot of work to do, but more of them you see them in awards categories now. They were then being interviewed. Everybody was sort of then jumping on the bandwagon, and which is great. That's what we wanted them to do. But it's just really nice to see that now. But I think, like Hannah said, the job specs is really where some more work has to be done. Because if I go on Sex and the City after we've done this interview and just go and read through a few of them, I bet you bottom dollar I'll find a couple of kind of feminized words dotted into some of the role adverts.
Those were the eyes with the little heart on top.
In terms of, I mean, you've had a really varied, strong career, and you've got a fantastic CV. We've kind of mentioned there are some PAs that have lost some mojo. You know, they are feeling a little bit kind of low at the moment. I think the pandemic's played a bit into that because, frankly, it's been an exhausting 2 years. But what advice would you give, Hannah, to people that do want to stretch? And because you're a confident person and you've put yourself forward for things you've asked, but there are many assistants that don't and just sit there quietly you know, sort of suffering and not, you know, not happy or energized by their roles. But what kind of tips might you give assistants?
Well, change won't just come to you. You've got to seek it out. If you just sit there doing your job day in, day out and not say anything, nothing will ever change. Yeah. The only person with any power to make changes to your life is you. And so you need to take ownership of that. And if things aren't working out for you, you need to have a conversation either with your line manager, your exec, HR, or even just a trusted colleague, and just get it out on the line and say, look, this is how I'm feeling. You know, I'd like to have a change. Have discussions with other people in other departments. Put things together yourself. You put yourself together a business case and go, right, can I come and work with you on secondment or do this for a day a week? If you don't ask, you're never going to.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. No. So,
and you know, Hannah, just to come back to that point, when I was younger, just starting out in my career, got to that point and then thought, I'm going to look for another job. And when I went to do the resignation, my boss said to me, but why didn't you talk to me about these things? If you had talked to me and told me what you wanted to do, I would have expanded your role. I would have reviewed your salary, but you never talked to me. You never gave me the opportunity to meet you halfway. And that was a real learning moment for me. After that, I never made that mistake again because I was really happy with the company, but I had felt that I had outgrown that box and I needed to move on. And to me, that was really a profound lesson in, yes, you have to speak up. You have to volunteer. You have to put yourself out there and say, I've got and we don't necessarily always have extra time, but I have a passion for this. Can I get involved? And if you don't have those conversations, it doesn't happen for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you're younger, it is just easier to move jobs. Because you know, you don't really feel any loyalty perhaps, or you know.
But I think we tend to be more conflict averse. As you get older and you mature, like I like to say, like fine wine, then you get a little bit more experience, you get a little bit more confident, you can have those difficult discussions. But I think when you're younger, it's just easier to pull the plug and move on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, the other thing, I mean, I had a major move. So I moved to Manchester without knowing anybody at all. So
no pressure.
As you do. Just rock up in a new city, don't know a single person. So yeah, when it comes to changing things for yourself, yeah, I can give you lots of tips on, you know, how to settle in a new city and so it's not just jobs. Yeah,
sometimes it's also just being willing to be uncomfortable.
Yeah,
whether it's that initial discussion or, like you said, arriving in a brand new city. We know it's not going to be easy, but if you can push through that initial discomfort, you can be really happy. But there will be some challenge there. And I think people sometimes shy away from challenge. It's safer and easier to stay where I'm comfortable. But it tends to be a lot of those people who also then complain about being bored, but they can't push through that barrier. So it's not easy, but it's always worth it.
Was Hannah, just been completely nosy here, but was the driver for moving to Manchester because there was more opportunities? I mean, that tends to be why people go to the bigger cities in the UK.
Yeah, so, well, no. yes and no. So I got a promotion at Mercer. So I applied for a secondment to work as the PA to the office head. And really that was the start of my PA career. So I got that job and she didn't come back from maternity leave. And so I ended up staying in Manchester, and here I am 12 years later, still here. So
how wonderful.
Well, it is a fantastic city, I have to say.
Yeah, you know, Vic invited me there a couple of years ago and I had a blast in Manchester. So hopefully one day soon I can get to visit again.
Oh, definitely. I think it's on the agenda for next year.
Brilliant.
But I completely get that. Having left London last year and moved to somewhere very rural, it is there's no kind of immediate family. My stepkids don't live that far away, but we've had to make friends from scratch with people, and yeah, it's one of those things you do at whatever point you are at in your life. But I think for some assistants, they will be in maybe rural areas where they do hit a lid, but you know, it's mostly small companies around that then they know the only way they're going to be able to get onto the next level of their career is to go to a bigger city. And I thought COVID would change some of that, but I don't think it fully has.
You know, in South Africa, we're now talking about a semigration. So instead of, you know, we've got what they call the brain drain and a lot of people immigrating to other countries. But because of COVID, they are now doing what is called a semigration. So I'm doing that next year, is moving down to the coastal areas. So moving out of cities because I can now work online. And I see this more and more, not only in different industries, but also in our industry, where companies are now willing to retain talent. Instead of you resigning or moving to another country, they're willing to let you work from somewhere else. So I think it is going to give some people a bit of a better lifestyle quality, instead of, you know, spending all day in traffic and that stuff. So we hope that that's a trend that remains.
Yeah, definitely.
Hannah, are you hybrid at the moment? What are your kind of arrangements with the new working world, as they keep dubbing it?
Yeah, so we have a hybrid working policy at Hollis. We have a mix. Some people do work fully from home. Some are in the office all the time because that's what they like and they enjoy. Others do a mix of some days in the office and some at home. So it's really good to have that flexibility.
Absolutely.
Because I've not been hearing some great stories very recently of, well, been promised kind of remote working or hybrid, and now in some employers in the UK, some, not all, but they're gradually trying to get their people back in full time. And I was told yesterday of a UK bank that have told their staff locally that every bit 2023 they all have to be back in
time. Yeah. Well, I had the opposite with a coaching client recently who's very excited. She's now been told the office is open, and she says she turns up every day and there's nobody there. And she was one of those people who struggled with work from home. She was genuinely excited. She's going back to life as usual with people. And she said she's now gone back to working from home because she's working in a ghost town. So I think it depends very much on who you are and what your work preferences are.
Definitely. I mean, I've been in a few times, like particularly on a Friday, very few people in the office sometimes. And you go, well, really, what's the point of me being here? So yeah, it doesn't make it worthwhile. So you've kind of got to be careful and choose your days when you go in, when you know that there's going to be others there.
Yeah. So looking back over your career, any kind of lessons learned, anything you would have done differently? I mean, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Genuinely genius advice that, you know, you wish you had learned earlier.
Gosh. I mean, what would I have done different? Do you know, I'm always the person that says I wouldn't change anything, because the things that I've done make me who I am. So if I hadn't done those things and experienced some of the difficult things that I've been through, then I wouldn't be like as resilient. I wouldn't be me. I wouldn't have that drive. I wouldn't have that compassion for others. So no, I wouldn't change the things that I've done, but I'd perhaps give myself a little bit more, I don't know, give myself some more compassion to think, you know, you are worth it. And maybe I would have left some of those situations sooner than I did, rather than kind of struggle on thinking it will work out. Because at the end of the day, some situations are just toxic, and you're better off removing yourself from those situations. So yeah, maybe I would have left those places sooner and moved on. But you can't regret anything, because like I say, it's... And,
you know, I always compare it to that, you know, they talk about the butterfly effect in movies. If you change one thing, it could change everything. And I agree with you. You know, you do what you can in that moment with the information that you have. Like you said, that self-compassion, that's where I was at that moment. Looking back on it now, that's something I might have wanted to do differently. But again, that lesson, would you have had that lesson if you had done it, you know, that way the first time? I think, and Vic and I always joke, I always say, thank God for the horrible bosses I had in my life, because I'm going to have training material for the rest of my life. I'm never going to run out of material. So I have to be grateful for them. You know, if I had only had a smooth ride, what stories would I be able to tell and what lessons would I be able to share? So I totally agree with that one.
Yeah, it's really good to know what you don't want to have.
Yes.
Yeah.
As much as what you do want to have, because then you've got those series of red flags that you can look out for. And if you're in a role and something pops up like that, you can immediately go, no.
I've seen this movie before.
Yeah. And then you can take steps to kind of mitigate that. Yeah. But if you've not been through it, you don't know necessarily how to handle it. So just approach everything with a learning experience, I would say. You know, everything happens for a reason. And if you needed to learn that lesson, then, that's why you're going through it.
And Hannah, have you noticed how we repeat things until we learn the lesson? Yes. Because if I look at some of the bosses I had, I didn't learn it the first time. So I had to, I went through several iterations until I got the lesson. So I think that's also something that tends to perpetuate. You know, you get into one toxic situation with a boss, but if you haven't really learned what you do want from the situation, you'll tend to repeat that until you get it. You know, if you're a slow learner like I am, it took me a few iterations.
But what Hannah was saying about what you don't want, I personally don't think enough assistants look at that. I honestly don't. And I think this is when they then get stuck or get caught up in a certain situation and then start even questioning whether they should be in this profession at all. Yeah. So I think that's a really important tip.
That's a great point.
Actually. Yeah.
And now we've all had experience in recruitment divisions. I'm assuming you've all been on a panel where they are interviewing an assistant. One of the things I've noticed, and I want to know if you've noticed it too, they'll go through the job requirements and then I can see in the body language, this person isn't happy with some of the requirements listed. And then they'll say, yes, sure. And in 6 months, they've resigned, they've left, And I think sometimes assistants are scared to say, no, I don't like working on financials. I can do it, but it's not a preference. No, I can't be available 24 hours a day. Because they're now selling something because they really want the job, but it's not a good fit and they know it up front. Have you experienced that? Or is that because South Africa has such, so few people who are employed, people are so desperate for jobs? Is it something that you've seen in your experience too?
Not as such, because we've been very clear about the role we've been recruiting for, and so would ask those kind of questions like, if they enjoy it or if they don't want it. So to be very clear from the outset that this is the role.
Yeah, but what I'm actually talking about is the candidate agrees to those terms, but you can see in the body language that person isn't happy, and 6 months down the line, they then leave that job. But they knew up front that wasn't something that they were keen on. Because I think a lot of assistants get themselves into jobs when they go to that interview and, yes, everything's fine, everything's great, give me the job, but knowing deep down it isn't a fit.
Yeah, sorry, that's not really anything I've kind of come across.
I have, because I've been there, but it was... Yeah. I think you're weighing up the financial side as well and paying bills and sometimes forcing yourself into roles that you're only 70% there with, and you're kind of like, oh, I don't, the other 30% I don't like, but actually, perhaps I can.
I'll just have to do it.
Because perhaps it'll balance out with the rest of it and the fact that it's a good salary. And yeah, I've definitely been that candidate, and I like to think that my body language is quite good enough to hide. Yes, I love financial spreadsheets. Yes, but yeah, it's horses for courses. But I think, like I said earlier, a lot of the PA job adverts, they're just so identical over here, very staid. If I'd struggle now going back into an EA role where I'd find an advert that was meaty and exciting enough for what I was used to when I was last being an EA, if that makes sense.
And there's no consistency with the job adverts either. So you could pick up a role profile for a team secretary that's more in depth than something that's badged as a PA. So you really have to graft as a support professional.
And what makes it what makes it even harder is, I don't know about the UK, but we don't have salary scales attached.
No.
So now you read the job description, but what level is this? And because they're so thin, you know, you can make certain assumptions, but if there's no salary scale, I don't know if I'm wasting my time applying.
I'll be honest, I've used recruitment agencies for a lot of the roles that I've gone for, because then you know the salary up front. And there's less waste of time applying, because if you've built that relationship with a recruiter, and there's ones that, you know, I've been in touch with for, you know, 10, 12 years, and they know me inside and out. So, you know, I have full confidence that, you know, I could go to that person and they would be able to find me a job that would fit me, because they know me. So I would say save some time, sign yourself up with an agency and just develop that relationship, because your success rate at getting roles will be so much higher.
Absolutely.
And you know, that's something that I've done. I've actually handed my notice in, having had a 3-month notice to give in financial services, knowing that I can get a job in 3 months, because I'll go through an agency and and got a job. So gives you that drive as well.
And I think your seat is hot, you need to start working on the exit. No, absolutely. And I do think also, you know, people underestimate the value of referrals through their own network. You know, that to us is very important. In South Africa, there's a very small group of very top assistants, and they all know each other. So if my boss is looking for a new excellent assistant, even years later, she'll phone me up and say, do you know somebody? You know what I want? Please, will you go and help me headhunt? So I think people underestimate that avenue as well.
It's recruitment is such a, we've talked a lot about it recently in terms of managing your career through difficult economic times, because we've got a recession coming up here in the UK, and you know, what Hannah was saying was getting to know the recruiters. You can't just ping your CV through and hope for the best. You've got to start putting in the graft now before the recession hits, when some PAs are going to need them. And so, you know, I think that's another tip, isn't it, Hannah, that you know, you've cultivated these relationships with certain recruiters over a time period, and actually that hard work at the beginning is now paid off, because when you do go to look again, then it's just much easier, and you're not being ghosted by them, which happens to a lot of people now, and you get that kind of personal contact.
Absolutely. And I followed one of them across like 3 or 4 different agencies. So I follow the person rather as opposed to the agency, because she knows me so well.
But also, you know, this comes back to that point of, we do business with people we like and trust. And so it wasn't the company, it was the individual. And once you've built that trust, you know, and you also see it with assistants, where that executive moves on, but they say, not without my assistant. That person we're a package deal. So I think, again, that strength of network, that relationship that you built before you needed it, you know, because I can't assume you built this relationship as you were looking for a job. You built this relationship while you were working with them, and then put your CV out to them. So again, don't disregard those relationships when you're not looking.
I know, it's a bit of a shame, because, how do I articulate this? Because PAs are such good relationship builders, you know, you've got all these different stakeholders when you're in a PA EA job. I don't understand why they don't do it with the recruitment part. A lot of what's gone on in this profession over the last 10 years is it's been, oh no, I've been made redundant quick. And then they're kind of hopping around and, you know, and getting, like I said earlier, potentially ghosted. And, you know, the competition is very strong on the recruitment scene now, isn't it, Hannah, here for good PAs? It's strong competition, and you don't know all these people personally that you'll be up against. So
and you know, I think also it's happened to me a couple of times in my career where I was working with somebody, an external stakeholder, and then they poached me from there. So not necessarily a recruiter, somebody outside of your direct influence that you work with and you build a good relationship with. So that's also something to bear in mind when you start thinking about your next move. Your next move might be in that circle that you have contact with.
Definitely. And don't be afraid to take on temp roles. You know, I've done quite a few different temp agency roles, and yeah, they might be pretty dull for a couple of weeks, but it's money in the door. And in a recession, that's what you need. So you can't afford to be too choosy sometimes. Just, you know, take the job, any job. It's admin, it's support. And sometimes, if you're lucky, they'll make you an offer at the end of like the month.
Exactly.
You go, we've got a better job for you. What about this?
And often assistants will miss out on that job because doing a temp gig is beneath me. But if you walk in with the right attitude and you're really good to those people, often that turns into full-time employment.
I was sitting here saying, hallelujah. You don't hear many people say that. And this is what I've been saying for years. Like, just take, well, we said it in the last session pod we did. Go, you know, if you find yourself made redundant and you need money quickly, go and get temp contract work, even if it's, you know, lower tasks of what you're used to doing. It doesn't matter. Like Hannah said, it's about getting money in the door, and then that takes away some personal stress so that you can then refocus where the next great role is going to be.
And also recruiters can smell desperation. Some people don't get jobs simply because you can sense that deep desperation. Sometimes just taking the pressure off, taking that temp job, you're in a good mindset when you walk into the interview, it reads better to the panel. So sometimes just from that point of view, it's also helpful.
Definitely. If you don't know, you might learn something, because it could be in a different industry to what you've experienced before. There could be different systems, different technology to learn. So even though it might be like a junior role, you can take something away from it usually.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that also depends on your personal mindset. You come across like a lady who walks into every situation and says, what can I learn from this? What can I gain from this? So, you know, that's a point that I want you to draw attention to, is sometimes it's mindset.
Yeah, for sure. I'm very much a doer. I'm like, I remember I got a job some years back, and while I was waiting for the start dates to come through and, you know, all the paperwork and everything, it was taking longer than expected. And I was like, well, I'm running a bit low on funds now, so I'll just get a temp job for a few weeks while I'm waiting for the start date. Literally just took like a 2-week holiday cover contract at this company on a local industrial estate. It was answering the phone, reception, typing, like basic admin duties. Before the end of the second week, they'd actually offered me a job. So I was like, I'm really sorry, you know, you're nice and everything, but you know, I do have this other job I've already signed a contract for.
But isn't that a great situation to be in? Where with the right attitude, you've now created 2 opportunities. And I think that's an important point to make, you know, and that whole thing of being curious. By nature, I'm curious. So I will fiddle with things. I'll ask questions. I'll get involved in things if I see people are struggling. And that's often how you move effortlessly and seamlessly through the ranks, simply because you're a nosy Parker and you're easily bored. You know, so sometimes that mindset can also propel you forward. But isn't that great how you took that opportunity, and it was literally just to cover you financially, but it produced 2 opportunities for work at the end of it?
I find your story incredibly inspiring, Hannah, and I hope assistants listening to this really take those key points from you and how you've charted your career so far. Because it has been a tough couple of years for everybody, and we know that. But I think a lot of assistants, like I said, are feeling a little bit maybe bored, tired, stagnated, lost some of the growth mindset that they had, which you need to, you know, have a career like yours and like we've had as well, and when we were assistants. But you know, you've got this kind of very down-to-earth nature with it as well, which I just think is lovely. And
I honestly think that you've shared so much gold dust today. I think anyone listening to this podcast is really going to have great value, you know, great ways of looking at things and ways of doing things. as a result of this podcast. So thank you so much for joining us. It really has been a joy, and please keep us updated on the awards.
Thank you. Yes, I will do.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining this episode of the Assistant Lab. If you enjoyed this content, you know what you need to do. Feel free to share it and help us grow our subscriber base.
Join us again next time, and until then, keep experimenting, innovating, and improving your skill set.